Do my checks, make sure we're good. Don't know how it be. We good? Here we are. Cool. Right? Right? Alright, yeah. Let's go, boys. Nice and Sunday today. I have myself a decently sized coffee this morning. Oh, I guess afternoon now. Mr. Jojo. My doggy. Come here. Come here, puppy. Come here. The peeps want to see you. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Get aside, Chad. He's thinking about it. Up. Maybe. No, we're gonna go upstairs, don't you? We'll go upstairs. Well, come here. He's being difficult. Being difficult. No, he won't be down here right now. Alright. Let me let him upstairs. Hang on. Let me let him upstairs. Hang on. Because he's being... Apologies, chat. I know, that was such a great way to start the stream. So, plan today is we're gonna read all of Tarkir Dragonstorm story. At least that's the hope. I mean, it's possible that I start trying to read this, and it turns out it actually takes like 7 hours to get through it all. In which case, that's not gonna all happen today. But I don't think that should be the case, but I guess I don't know for sure. People were saying the story time's actually pretty good. I believe there's no loot this time, which is amazing. That's really good. Here's hoping that is the case. Oh, I've heard some things. I've heard Jace, like, freed Bolas somehow, because he's stupid. I've heard that... I've heard that... Wow. Okay. That Sarkon turns to a dragon, apparently. Loot's there. Oh my god. He just gets abused? Where's the W? That is a W then. Let's go! Let's go! That's peak, actually. That's so good. I hope that's not a lie, Rebellious. I hope you're telling the truth. I hope you wouldn't lie to me, would you? I hope not. We'll see what happens. Hopefully, the story's actually good. People are saying the story time's actually pretty good, not terrible, compared to like other stories from Wizards. So, we'll see what happens. Give it a few more minutes here for people to hop in. Hope everyone's having a very good Sunday today. I got like... Yeah, never mind. We are so back. Here's hoping. Is Tarkir's story good? We gonna find out. Oh. We gonna find out. I've heard good things. I'm now being told Luke gets abused. I hope that's true. Can Zergo just punt him across a football field? Go long! And he just kicks him. Yards. Ah. Peak. This is what peak backstory is right here. Abusing Furby creatures. I keep waiting for it. I keep waiting for it to get revealed that like Loot is gonna turn like into like some horrible monster. Like I remember when he first got teased, I called him the proto pet from Ratchet and Clank 2, where they're supposed to look cute, but they actually are capable of being like incredibly violent. I'm waiting for that to happen, but that hasn't happened yet. I'll probably actually turn the music off once we start reading it. The screaming, crying Loot was so much better than Nicol Bolas reveal in the same chapter. Don't spoil it too much now. Don't spoil it too much now. Honestly, I'm not sure how well the stream's gonna go. It's possible that I actually don't. It's possible that I actually don't even make a video out of this because I have no idea how well reading Magic stories is gonna go in terms of being entertaining. In edging in the eternities, Loot transforms to an Elder's Horror. I mean, hey, if it kills him, we take those. So we have we have Final Fantasy, edging in the eternities, and then what? Spider-Man? Is that what it is? I think it is. Coming soon. Final Fantasy, edging in the eternities, Marvel Spider-Man, and wow, okay. That feels really weird, dude. That feels really weird. So, okay, so in order, we have Final Fantasy, edging in the eternities, Spider-Man, then Avatar. We have 3 Universe Beyond sets in the same year after this. Wow. That's gonna feel really bad, actually. Like, as someone who doesn't really particularly care about any of these... Okay, correction. I like Edge in the Eternities. I don't really care for the other 3 that much. I think the space set is actually gonna be really good. I actually have high hopes for it. I'm hoping they finally do something with the Fomori that they've been, like, subtly teasing at this whole time. I'm hoping Fomori finally gets something for this, but maybe they won't. Final Fantasy, I'm like vaguely interested in because of Kingdom Hearts. I've played all the Kingdom Hearts games. Spider-Man, I've stopped. Dude, I haven't watched a Marvel movie in like so long. And Last Airbender, I've never watched. I just don't care. I might watch it before the set releases, just so I can try and hype myself up a little bit. I might do that. Just to try and, like, have some more joy for it. Tezzeret gonna go crazy and edging in the eternities? Hopefully. We're gonna be edging in the eternities. It's gonna go so hard, chat. That's gonna go crazy. It's gonna be peak. It's gonna be so peak, dude. I'm telling you. Dude, I really... Like, I don't think they'd give us our new Ruhan card, because it feels like the Fomori have, like, completely evolved since their original interpretations. Like, their old cards depicted them as just this, like, pretty, like, tribal-looking, like monk giants with, like, with horns to make them iconic. And now they're depicted as these, like, interplanar, like... conquerors, like they almost feel like a faction from Warhammer now, with like all like the tech stuff they seem to be alluding to. Like they somehow reached Ixalan without having the ability to like traverse planes. Like they feel like a Warhammer 40k faction now, based on the new cards. So I'm not really sure what they're gonna look like when we get them, but I just hope they keep the really cool like. Very, like, shamanic, like, monk giant aesthetic. Because that's what I actually like about them. They have just a really cool design. They got tattoos on their bodies, too. Like, they're all tatted up. They got, like, the iconic horns on their head. They're cool looking. Alright. Do you want music chat for the story or nah? All I have is the Pokemon compilation music for my streams. I'm thinking I'm gonna turn it off for the stream. Look, it's kind of out of character for the story. Would be hype. I don't really have any good music for it, unfortunately. I might have it turned off this time. Honestly, if it feels like no one even really cares for the story, I might even just, like, stop the stream early if it feels like chat's not really enjoying it. Because that's... I have a feeling what's gonna happen is we're gonna get into this. We'll get, like, 2 episodes in, and chat's like, alright, we don't care anymore. And honestly, I might not care anymore when I get to that point. I don't know. Let's see what happens. I got coffee. I might need to actually go and get another drink at some point just to have my a good reading voice. Alrighty. Hi, boys and girls and dragons in my chat. Tarkir Dragonstorm, episode 1: Stories and Their Bones. You know what? I'm just gonna go and get a drink now, just so I'm ready for when it comes. Hang tight, chat. Here, I'll play some music for y'all longer. Hi, chat. Got a big old thing of ice water for me. When the time comes. I cannot wait for the part where Elspeth says, "What is this? Some kind of Tarkir Dragonstorm?" Absolute cinema. Alrighty. Oh. Alright. There's an audiobook version too, but I'm not gonna do that. Alright, boys. Let's hope it's good. The next performers were a strangeness of cumbersome satchels and cloying incense, beribboned spears and etched swords of blunted edges, so they're useless swords. Headdresses that seemed like wildly decorated manes at first. Whenever they moved, they chimed, jangled, and occasionally rattled like a pouch full of bone dice. Narset studied them with interest as they made their preparations on what passed for a stage in the bustling tavern. The building, which was often the first or last stop for anyone coming from or venturing to the Salt Road, slouched on the lip of the fishing village surrounding the Dirgur Lake Monastery. In years past, it had been a much smaller establishment, operated by an elderly monk who'd forsworn her vows for a raucous triptych of husbands, a tea house with ambitions, but what was once a trickle of customers grew into an implacable deluge, and the proprietors were forced to expand. Narset suspected there'd be more renovation work soon. The night's clientele were already spilling into the jasmine-scented air outside. She made note to arrange for a formal meeting, if for no other reason than to collate what news the tavern's owners might have heard. Narset's status as the Waymaster meant very few were willing to be upfront with her, and even fewer had the stomach to be anything but ingratiating. So Gilf Narset is badass. A toxic deluge. Ah! Yeah, dude, Narset's like old as hell now, right? Yeah, she's like super old now. I'm not sure what happened. We last saw her in what? Ikoria? Now she get Gilf status. The pair on stage touched their foreheads together, less people than a maelstrom of rainbow fabrics, faces now obscured by bestial masks, one red, one blue. Is it? When do they put them on? Narset wondered. She sat just close enough to be able to hear the two giggling to one another in a halfway familiar dialect. It carried lone words from the Sultai, a smattering of profanities from the Abzan, and conjugations bizarre as their paraphernalia. Narset wanted very badly to ask what province they hailed from, and why their grammar was so elastic, if the idiosyncrasies in their speech were native to whichever home village they hailed from, or accrued from a life in travel, or it was something peculiar to them and them alone. She had heard apocrypha about how twins developed their own language, and certainly the two could pass for such. They had the same build, the same lopsided smirk, the same way of canting their heads, like two foxes sharing secrets. After the show, Narset told herself, it'd probably be an excruciating faux pas if she interrupted them in the middle of their performance. Although Narset was the Waymaster, the actual leader of the Jeskai now, really, to her periodic chagrin, so it seemed equally possible they'd see her attention as a boon. If only she knew more about them. That way, she would be able to better assess the consequences of approaching them. But to have that data, she'd actually need to speak to them. The problem was becoming recursive. Narset. Friends! Trumpeted the shorter of the two. A woman, if Narset had to guess from the voice, with a flourish of a hand. The noise in the tavern died to a rumble. Patrons settling into whatever chair or stool they could scrounge from the crush of bodies. Those without seating leaned themselves against the walls when even the low murmuring had dulled to actual silence. The performer spoke again in a bright, chirpy tone. We come to you tonight to entertain. Recognition jolted through Narset. No longer was the performer wearing her Celadon mask. It had vanished somehow without Narset's notice. In its place was a far more familiar visage, rendered in papier-mâché and paint. A face Narset saw sometimes in her nightmares, beatific in its victory. Ojutai, how, what? And to educate! The other performer, now astride a pair of stilts, began to prowl in circles around their shorter companion, exhaling smoke until the stage was obscured by the gray. The first performer diluted to a hazy silhouette. To tell you of how the 5 clans were once enslaved, chained. From the murk came the sound of chains pulled, and a great weight heaved onto the floor, startling nervous laughter from the crowds. To the whims of the dragon lords and a hero. The performer lurched from the smoke, and Narset had to swallow a cry of surprise. Gone was the Ojutai mask. Now, the performer, arms spread as if she could enfold the room in them, wore Narset's face, or at least the version someone would engrave onto a death mask. Saintly and serene, devoid of any real expression, faultless and empty, gathered the leaders of the clans to save us all. Excuse you, came a woman's pettish voice. The accent was tamer. The teamer of accents. Narset had to be persuaded to help by the rebellion leaders. Ah! A Mardu engineer, if the menagerie of tools hanging from their belt was any indication, nodded in sullen agreement. Yeah! All she did was uncover the storm ritual! Wow. Narset fraud alert. Narset receded into her chair. She loved the tavern despite how packed it was and how odorous its clientele could sometimes be. It was one of the few places where Narset could go and enjoy anonymity, or at least something cousin to such. She wasn't naive enough to think she could elude complete notice, but if any of the patrons recognized her, they kept the knowledge to themselves. However, that might all change if the performance agitated the crowd into their native allegiances. Anyway, it was Codus who was the real hero. None of the other rebellion leaders died and then returned to continue their duties, grumbled a woman in the crowd. Her raiment told the world she was Sultai, the gleaming white jade of her jaw gorgeously intaglioed. What the hell? What are these? What? Said she, too, had died and come back to perform whatever duties had survived her brief flirtation with death, and that those duties likely included working with her government on a high level. Narset could tell her clothes were made of the finest silks. Clearly, the woman was at least a stone's throw from nobility. Only because the other rebellion leaders were too clever to be killed, shot the Mardu engineer, who looked much younger to Narset on second inspection. Their face held a puppyish softness still, one at odds with their fierce grimace. The mounting argument was interrupted by a sudden deafening roar. From behind the performer, a cataclysm of shapes clambered up through the smoke. Snake-headed Silumgar, a Tarka with her crown of antlers, spined Kolagon, Dramoka, shining like the sun, and of course, feathered Ojutai, beautiful and merciless as winter. Someone in the crowd screamed. High and thin, Narset tensed. Illusions, she told herself, nothing more. But Narset's pulse still juddered in her veins. Once! Intoned the performer, unmasked. Hands steepling bare, her face was dark and almost unfinished, like a shard of porcelain waiting for an artist's brush. The Dragon Lords ruled. They and their broods hunted us. The smoke began to move, spiraling, fletched now with a suggestion of wings and scales. The visages of those Dragon Lords distorting, fading into the murk. There was no sign of the other performer, although the taste of their magic slicked the air. Cries began to echo from the murk, voices begging for their lives. They killed us! The voices were eaten by the sounds of gristle chewed and flesh peeled from bone, of organs gored from bellies, scooped clean until there was nothing left save for a rime of skin. A wet and noisome cacophony, so vivid that Narset heard several people retching. She could almost sell it, that carrion reek. We were given a choice, to fall in line or die. Narset thought of Ojutai. Then, once, she had been his favorite novelty. A human with no desire to save for the acquisition of more knowledge. How he had loved her for that. The great teacher and his perfect student, and how she had adored him in return. Under his care, Narset had thrived, had found direction and structure both. For a few exquisite years, she suffered none of her usual restlessness. There had been purpose, peace. But that was Ojutai's gift, a ruthless ability for convincing the world his path, his vision, was not just his superior option, but the only option. Even if it did mean the loss of the Ghost Fire Warriors and sacrifice of the Jeskai cultural identity. Unlike the other Dragon Lords, the great teacher had no need to coerce worship, to frighten them into serving. They'd donned their collars willingly and laid themselves at his talons, all in hopes that in death they'd earn what they were taught to covet. Rebirth in the image of their oppressor. The Temur woman was not wrong. Narset had needed convincing. Even now, a wretched part of her regretted her involvement in saving Tarkir. Narset lost her dragon. And for centuries, that was what we did. That's what the other clans did, said the Mardu engineer, arms folding. They were human, which was a surprise to Narset, and sleekly built. To her knowledge, these roles in the Mardu were often taken by much larger species. Our clan did not kneel. We had a truce with Kolagon and her brood. A truce that served to do nothing but starve your people. Do you know how I died? Said the Sultai noble, absolute aura, in the light rendering her eyes opalescent and strange, because a boy from your clan ran me through with his knife. I was a traitor on my way home to my wife and children. I'd found him on the salt road, almost dead of hunger. I fed him, but it wasn't enough. He wanted everything. He killed me for 2 days' worth of rice. She rasped the next words. Tell me it was worth it. Tell me this was what the Mardu prayed for, and what they envisioned when they agreed to this truce. Tell me the knowledge your people have been driven to such desperation doesn't shame you, and I'll never speak of it again. I'm sorry, came the flinching, immediate answer. There was no valor in what happened to you. Try as they did, the Dragon Lords could not extinguish our spirit, growled the performer, seemingly oblivious to the endless interruptions, and the smoke became moted with pinpoints of light. Like torches in the dark, the embers of rebellion were always there. Soon, they became a blaze that could not be quenched. At the word blaze, the smoke erupted into a heatless inferno. Heroes emerged from the ranks of SO on cue. The second performer stepped out of the flames to a scatter of confused applause. The illuminated faces of the audience halfway between awe and a burgeoning terror. He came to stand beside his companion, the fire throwing deep shadows over their lean faces, silhouetted such that they barely looked human. The teamer. Both performers raised their right hands in unison and brought them down over their respective faces. Like an axe brought down on the throat of a nightmare, by the time their hands had resettled at their sides, they were masked again. This time in the images of Eshki, Dragonclaw, and who? And Al-Niyul, the Twice Whisperer. Who is this? The one who had rose to lead the Teamer Rebellion and the one who foretold her victory. The Mardu, said the female performer, and between one blink and the next, she went from wearing Eshki's likeliness to bearing Dragonstorm's face. The Abzan, said his opposite as she prowled forward, with a twitch of her shoulders and a sharp tilt of her head, hand flashing over her face. She went from looking like Zergo Stormrender to donning Felothar's own proud visage. The Sultai, said her companion in a clear, light tenor, his voice unmuffled despite the fact he now wore a flawless recreation of Codis's visage. Narset was beginning to understand how the pair were accomplishing their mask changes. It had something to do with the intricate headdresses the two wore. Massive structures of white fur and black velvet, copper embroidery, and emerald curlicues, and trailing feathers of improbable size. Clearly, the masks were housed inside them. But what Narset couldn't get into it was how the female performer had cycled through her masks, because that seemed much harder to do. And the Jeskai, said his partner. Narset winced. It thrilled her to witness such a masterful show, but she would be happy to live out the rest of her life without ever again seeing her face used as a prop. Together, said the woman wearing Narset's countenance, her voice shading to slyness, the emphasis deliberate, an acknowledgement of the earlier heckling. They sought to bring an end to the Dragon Lord's reign. Together, they fought for Tarkir's freedom. And the crowd roared so loud it caught her off guard. Tables were pounded, the floor stamped by a thunder of booted feet. Narset resisted, clamping her hands over her ears. It was too much and too loud. She could feel the noise in her bones. Panic rippled through Narset. Before, the tavern had only felt cramped, but now it was like there was no distance between her and every other patron. And if she didn't leave now, she never would. She would be trapped forever in this crush of voices. She touched the fingers on each of her hands to their corresponding thumbs, counted her breath. When Narset had reached 20, she took to tallying the feathers on each of the performers' headdresses. 18, 7 natural, the rest clearly artifice, and the tools, 14 in total, dangling from the Mardu engineers' belts. Then she numbered the tavern's clientele by age, clan, presumed gender, and any other categories you could think of. After a few moments, the panic eased its grip, enough that Narset could breathe again. Father Pucci, counting prime numbers, method of calming down. They fought so their people would no longer be made into prey, bellowed the performer. And as she spoke, the air echoed with a din of battle. Her voice grew in volume to be an inhuman booming thunder. Blue light wreathed her like a flame. So their traditions would be protected, their pasts undevoured, their lives their own and only their own. Although they stood against the Dragon Lords themselves, they did not falter. Her counterpart crooked his fingers, and the lights cohered into a floating diorama, circling the air above her head like a halo. Though azure-tinted and faintly transparent, it was recognizably the crucible of the Spirit Dragon, where Narset and her allies had gathered to change the fate of the world. Narset, said the performer, along with wise Alniul, had discovered an ancient spell, one perhaps as old as the multiverse itself, the Storm Nexus Ritual. Memory overtook Narset's excruciating awareness of the crowd. It had been a gamble. They had no idea what the ritual would do. If the situation had been quite so dire, if she'd been alone and without Alniul's unflinching convictions, if the dragons were closing in, furious that mere meat would attempt an uprising, Narset might have simply returned the decrepit skull, holding the ritual to its case, and thought no more of it. But they were desperate, and the Storm Next ritual promised to invoke the essence of Tarkir itself. If it had failed, Narset buried the rest of the thought. There at the Crucible, the leaders of the rebellion cast a spell, and a massive Dragonstorm formed, one larger than any Tarkir had seen. Absolute cinema. Distantly, Narset wondered if the performers took feedback. The superlatives, while clearly there to create drama, felt unnecessary. And from it emerged the illusions cracked like ice, jagged striations wending up and through the image of the Crucible. Splintering, shards drifted away, and as Narset watched, they lost their shape, gaining others, the Spirit Dragons. As illusionary versions of the Spirit Dragons miniaturized to fit the tavern, almost adorable, flew overhead, Narset thought about how they were the embodiments of not just their respective clans' greatest hopes, but the traits that would save them. She watched as the few Abzan in attendance, faces haunted by memory, bow to the simulacra of Betor, recalling the stories of how Dramoka had demanded the Abzan repudiate their honored dead. The Dragon Lord had branded their ancestral worship unnatural, and she'd made them choose between their pasts and the survival of their present. Betor, brilliant as the desert sun, existed in defiance of those edicts. The lost spirits of the Abzan brought together into a singular form. Looking to the Sultai woman, Narset saw the shine of tears in the latter's eyes. Teval, fair and ruthlessly impartial, must have been a relief after centuries of living under Silumgar's rule. For years, the Sultai had to invent new rites and new festivals, hoping it'd distract their oppressor from his boredom and endless paranoia, and stave off their obliteration a little longer. It was with the Mardu and the Tamer. Kulagan had divided them, and Neriv now was bringing them together, espousing the strength in the collective. Atarka ate her way through the Whisperers of the Tamer, reducing the clan to a hunting pack. They were reduced to tools, their humanity stripped from them. Their only purpose was to feed Atarka and her brood, and according to rumor, she and her spawn had a taste for the Tamer in particular. But Ureni, zealous Ureni, they wouldn't let anything happen to the Tamer. Not now, not ever. For that reason, Narset knew she would love Shiko, the spirit dragon whom she'd called from the ritual. whom she'd ridden into battle against the Dragon Lords, whose essence she'd shaped with her own beliefs, her veneration of the truth, and even her secret desire for a more decisive personality. But she didn't. Not really. Not like how she'd loved Ojutai, who had only ever been good to her. She respected Shiko. She trusted the spirit dragon. If Narset were to die, she knew Shiko would continue to provide excellent counsel to whoever succeeded her. Her clan was safe now, and she would remain safe under Shiko's care, but she didn't love Shiko, no. Not with those wings of hers, like so many scrolls unfurling through the air, a reminder of Narset's role in ending the world she knew. The leaders of their rebellion leapt onto their dragons. "Wait!" came Timir's voice again. "How do they know which was their dragon?" "I thought," said the young Mardu, a little tremulously, "the dragons chose the leaders they wanted to be tied to." "Really? I was taught the spirit dragons required a piece of a clan leader's soul in order to," began an old Abzan man who'd been silent up to this point. "That's not what I," said a pretty Jeskai monk who Narset almost recognized. "Jeskai propaganda. The pivotal battle was obviously led by. My father was present, so you're wrong. Actually," full throated arguments shook loose across the tavern as the patrons gleefully took to defending their own apocrypha. Narset glanced at the stage where the performers stood, looking somewhat nonplussed. Phantom dragons winging listlessly overhead. The illusionist gave his partner what Narset decided was a philosophical shrug, and was answered with a rolling of deep umber eyes. "Oh no, propaganda! Oh no!" And that devolved into yet another heated quarrel, adding to the ceaseless noise. "The dragons," said Narset, deciding enough was finally enough, "were unformed in the beginning." Her voice carried enough to startle those closest to her to an awed silence as those patrons quieted. Others followed suit. She heard her name whispered, passed through a tavern like a promise of freedom, and Narset mourned the loss of the tavern as a place she could go and be treated as any other traveler. Everyone would be on watch for her after this. 5 glowing figures emerged from the Dragonstorm. 5 with the silhouettes of dragons but no features. They were simply power made incarnate, waiting to be called into being, said Narset, feeling again how Shiko formed under her, how it had dug tether hooks into her thoughts, seeking a path to follow. I was the first to leap onto one. Then the others followed, and we became bound to our spirit dragons, just as they became bound to us. Narset forced herself to stare forward, focusing on nothing. The tavern was entirely silent now, and there was a bottomless quality to the attentive quiet that filled Narset with a sudden irrational dread. It felt like an open maw, a waiting mouth, one that would swallow her whole if she let it. Together, we rode into battle, ultimately driving the Dragon Lords into a storm. As we said the female performer, rather hopefully. Heroes, but the worst is to come, said Narset. The performers released a paired sigh. Narset realized that had been their last attempt at keeping the show on track, and she was only slightly sorry to have derailed it with her first-hand knowledge of the events that they were dramatizing. Decent rendition or not, Narset did loathe that mask of her face. The two sat themselves cross-legged on the stage, joining the crowd in its rapt interest in Narset, the illusionary dragons dissipating. Though the Dragon Lords were vanquished, the Dragonstorms remained, and they have gotten worse. A low murmur slithered through the tavern. They've become strong enough to reshape the very land. There are places now where no one can go, let alone live. To say nothing of the wild dragons that have spawned, these new dragons are intractable beasts. I've heard reports. Narset might have continued with her litany of observed horrors. The list of reports that she had received and catalogued over the months, each more dire than the last, might have even told them about the guilt weighing on her, the lingering fear that they exchanged one evil for a worse one, if not for the doors of a tavern slamming open. A figure stood silhouetted by lantern lights, its arms flung open. Whoever it was, they'd been running hard. Their bodies shook with panting breaths. Waymaster! Wailed the new arrival. Waymaster, where are you? No, she'd never be able to come back here again. Pity. Here, said Narset, raising an arm reluctantly. The figure quickly revealed as a soft-faced man with a prodigious mustache as he stumbled through a tavern. A Viltrumite! Someone has arrived. She seeks an audience with Master. Who are you talking about? A woman, he panted, prostrating himself before her. Narset winced at his genuflections. She didn't like the thought he might be afraid of her. I think, at least, she's a woman. Calm down, please. Everything shall be fine, said Narset, stooping to collect him from the floor, hands set supportively atop his shoulders. She has wings, my con, and glowing eyes I've never seen. Her name is Elspeth, said Narset very softly. And if she has come, seeking me on Tarkir, something terrible must have happened. Half an hour for the first story. Okay. So I guess did the whole thing of like the old Dragon Lords being beaten back happen in the original story, or no? Is that like a thing that's only getting told now? Like, I thought what happened was Sarkhan had like completely rewritten the plane's history through like reviving Ugin, and as a result the clans ceased to exist. Like, I thought that the clans had just like stopped existing entirely because the clan's lore and history just got the clan's lore and history just got replaced by the Dragon Lords. Like, I thought the clan, I thought the Abzan, Mardu, all of them just essentially had their existence erased because Sarkhan had revived Ugin, and as a result, created the Dragon Lords, who essentially denied the clans the ability to ever exist by the dragons just killing all the people and eating them and making them serve them. I thought that was the whole thing from the get-go. So to have them come back is like really confusing, because I thought we did some timey-wimey bullshit. The clans fought against the dragons and were defeated, but their cultures endured in the shadows. Right, but I thought the dragons just never. I thought the clans just never existed post Dragons of Tarkir. The clans were way more ancient than Sarkhan's timeline bullshit. Okay. Welcome to the stream, Claire. Oh, I hear Mardu. Maybe now I will find out why Ugin was fighting them. Oh, yeah. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Ugin has beef with random frickin' Mardu clan. Alright, so Narset was trying to have, you know, a bit of alone time to herself at random taverns, and now she has to be the role of history teacher. Now she can't go back ever again. Womp womp tier. It's like if a time traveler helped the Mongols conquer Europe, but European culture would still endure. Okay, that makes sense. I get that. Alright. So, Elspeth is an angel now. I really thought she would, become like a Theros god, but I guess not. Alrighty. Episode 2. Omens. Elspeth was accustomed to being stared at. She was equally familiar with being barraged by odd questions and desperate prayers. The sight of an archangel had a habit of inspiring such things, but she wasn't used to a small child clinging to her wings and asking, Are you a dragon? She blinked lambent eyes at the round, unfrightening face peering up at her. A dragon? You have wings, started the child as somewhere in the distance. A woman let out a scandalized yelp. The mother, presumably. Elspeth took an absent note of the fact that no one else on the sky ship had come to interrogate her about her presence. Not after she explained to a flustered dignitary that was here to see Narset. Please, and was cordially told to make herself at home until the way master could be retrieved. Whatever else Narset's people of Jeskai supplied a memory, they at least were polite. What? Whatever else Narset's people of Jeskai supplied a memory, they at least were polite. Okay. And you have 4 other limbs, the child continued. There was something fussy about the way she spoke the phrase, like someone being coerced into allowing use of their best crockware and now watching vigilantly to prevent damage. That means you're a dragon. Elspeth considered this. Does it? The child nodded. The accusation made a kind of tilted sense. Elspeth had heard stories of how alien the dragons of Tarkir were, how variable in form they'd become. Perhaps it was just simpler for the parents in this plane to caution their offspring that everything with 4 limbs and 2 wings was a dragon, a blanket warning to keep children from investigating strange noises in the dark. Except there was real fear in the woman's face as she came racing up to Elspeth, hands clutching for her daughter's shoulders. My apologies, she said, imposing herself between Elspeth and the child. The latter herded behind the woman despite her loud protestations. Mama, I want to talk to the dragon lady. My daughter hasn't learned her manners yet. Please do not take anything as she says as an offense. Elspeth stretched out a mailed hand and was faintly surprised when the woman cowered away. In her previous life, she might have laughed or tried harder to reassure the pair. Since her ascendance, however, every impulse felt muted. Insignificant, dwarfed by an instinct toward doing what was right. And what was right for the woman was giving her the mercy of distance. It was clear all she wanted was to get away from Elspeth, run as far as the ship would permit her. No offense was taken. Elspeth folded her wings tight against her back and dipped her chin, hoping the woman would find some comfort in her cool formality. May you go with the blessings of what gods you worship. That earned the Archangel an odd look. The woman flashed her an uncertain smile before she spooned her daughter up into a one-armed embrace and draped her over the shoulder like a sack of rice, backing away from Elspeth once she was certain the girl was secure. 4 strides into her retreat, the woman turned and broke into a trot. The Archangel could hear them arguing as they went. But the dragon lady, for the last time, she's not a dragon. If she's not a dragon, why can't I talk to her? Because I could be wrong! Their voices died into the background chatter. The pearly light emitting from Elspeth was chiller in hue than the glow from the trails of lanterns suspended in the air. They bobbed with the wind, untethered to anything. Finally alone, Elspeth stood and studied the skyship. It might have been a temple once, or even a series of them. At least, before disaster struck. Whatever had happened wasn't enough to deter Jeskai from making use of the ruins. Roofed structures, a curved eaves, sky blue, and ornamented with gold, striated in places with cracks or signs of repair, were carefully stacked along the bow of the massive vessel. At their summit hung a massive beacon the color of cinnabar. There were monks everywhere, some laden with scrolls, others traversing the topsails, attending to the rigging. Swabbing a deck, they moved with a practiced acrobatic efficiency, and even as she was now displaced from mortal concerns, Elspeth found them a pleasure to witness. So they have freaking weather lights now? They have weather lights from Dominaria? Alright, man. Urza can't have shit. Elspeth Tyrrell, came a voice from behind her. We have never met, but I know you by reputation, just as you know me by the same. It is a pleasure to finally meet you. We have shared many friends in common. She turned to see a woman in robes with the same blue and white palette as the monks. Only her garments were more elaborate and embellished. Her expression was calm but otherwise inscrutable. Her smile perfunctory. I am Narset, Way Master of the Jeskai. I believe you are seeking me. Elspeth did not waste time on empty courtesies. Dragonstorms had begun appearing throughout the multiverse? I've come to ask how Tarkir has kept them at bay across the multiverse. Narset's expression adjusted to one of faint concern. I'm afraid you might have come for nothing then, said Narset, already moving to the cabin, fingers crooked to gesture Elspeth forward. Please, follow me to my study. We need to consolidate our knowledge of the Dragonstorms. I have a suspicion things are far worse than either of us could have imagined. Though Narset knew the Jeskai conventions of hospitality, she was unsure about the correct protocol when one's guest was an archangel. Elspeth, as far as Narset was aware, hadn't always been a celestial being. She'd been human once, although from all accounts, she possessed the same rigorous values then that she had now. With a pang, Narset thought again of Ajani and how fond he'd been of Elspeth, of her devotion to what was right, her compassion, and her commitment to defending those who could not do so themselves. She thought of Tamio and her story circle, the moonfolk woman's appetite for learning everything, no matter how trivial the anecdote. She was the first one to speak of Elspeth and her courage. Narset hoped her friends. What else did you call people who you'd sit and share stories with? Let's do for hours, drinking up every tale they offered, were, well, since her spark guttered out, she could no longer walk the blind eternities, something that felt like loss at first, and then a relief. She had justification now to think of Tarkir and only Tarkir, to put all of herself into the work of rehabilitating her ravaged home. Nonetheless, she missed them, those other planeswalkers, those rare few who understood what it was like to not entirely belong, who longed for more than flesh and tradition could ever aspire to. Tamio would have been glad our meeting here, said Elspeth. The light from her was like something from a dying candle. Yes, she would have, said Narset, surprised at how raw her voice was. And Ajani, too. Isn't Ajani alive? It cost everything to bring him and Nissa back. Ugh! Nissa, the life of a woman, the spark from a living planeswalker, and the spark from a dead one. Ajani, I think sometimes he'd have preferred. The words died in her throat. At his heart, said Narset slowly, the silence barred with hurt. If either of them were careless, they'd cut themselves open on the past. He only ever wanted peace. Yes. An awkward quiet settled over them, heavy as bloodied silk, the two separated by the island of Narset's desk. She had protested its grandeur, saying she needed nothing but space enough for her inkpots and scrolls, textbooks, and untranslated volumes. But the other stewards insisted. The Jeskai needed a new symbol, and, as Waymaster, it was her duty to serve, and as such, she required the right trappings, and that began with a sufficiently officious-looking desk. Earlier, you said things might be worse than either of us could have imagined. The Dragonstorms and Tarkir have become considerably more potent, said Narset, glad for the change of topic. Grief was so complicated to navigate. She knew farmers who disdained sympathy and preferred a no-nonsense delivery of bad news, but also warriors as fragile as blown glass who wept like children when told a loved one had passed. Narset couldn't tell where Elspeth fell in that spectrum. Worse, she was sure the Archangel would look askance at the Jeskai's apathy toward any concept of an afterlife. Then again, she might not, Ajani had said. Narset shook her head. Focus, she muttered herself, trying not to think of how she had learned secondhand of Johnny's arrival in Tarkir and of how many days she'd spent waiting for the Leonin warrior to reach out, reconnect. Had he thought her callous because of this? Had she failed him? So much so, they'd begun to reshape Tarkir itself. Narset removed a map from its scroll case and unfurled it across her desk. The parchment was mottled with annotations, notes she'd made across recent months. Some places have seen elevated water levels, other sinkholes, even new geological formations that unto itself would be concerning, as it has worrying ramifications for the local ecosystems. But look here, here, and here. Narset pointed to 3 spots on the map, each heavily circled in ink. Our Mardu contacts say there are places in the steppes that have begun to grow scales. Scales? As in the land itself. No. Nothing is coming alive. Narset thought on this for a moment. Yet, although according to reports, there are now oxen with reptilian eyes and cast-going wings. Oh no! I don't know how much of this is apocryphal, but one thing is for certain. There are primordial forces in play here. Something as powerful as Ugin. Except, Ugin is gone, said Elspeth. Narset nodded. And Bolus is dead, in theory. It's possible that this could be the work of some other elder dragon of their level, but Ugin believes all his kin to be dead. She drew a thin breath. It has something to do with Ugin's departure. I am sure of it. His presence catalyzed, if not outright created, original storms. However, according to all of our records, they never exceeded a certain intensity until he was incapacitated. Therefore, it stands to reason that he served as a metaphysical ballast somehow, keeping the plane in check. She caught herself, staunched the torrent of words with a swallowed noise of frustration. Elspeth had asked for none of Narset's theorizing, and so she wouldn't subject her guest to such. This was decorum, or at least, that was what Narset had been told. Either way, said Narset, smoothing her voice into nonchalance. The Dragonstorms would be manageable problems if not for the fact that they've been producing more dragons, each of them larger, stronger, and hungrier than the last. We had learned how to fight the old broods, but these new dragons defy everything we knew. What if the solution lies in the ritual you use? Said Elspeth. It is possible that all we need to do is modify. I can't, said Narset, voice fraying. I won't. You don't understand the ritual. She had kept her explanation of what had transpired in Tarkir and her role in the revolution as bare bones as possible. Half because Narset was sick to death of hearing her own pains. Half because there was grief enough at the table without her adding more. A small, childish part of her had worried they'd break under the weight of it all. But perhaps she should have elaborated. It would have made this part easier. The ritual, repeated Narset. It did more than summon the spirit dragons. How to put into words what she herself barely comprehended. It seemed gauche. Irresponsible somehow. As best as I understand, it may have destabilized the delicate balance of Tarkir, resulting in a chain reaction. And you're afraid that history will repeat itself if you were to provide assistance. Always that same effectless calm. Correct. It would be different if I had Ojutai. The past and its thrice damned thorns. Narset flinched at how easily she invoked the Dragon Lord, for all that he was anathema to Majeskai these days. Luckily, Elspeth's face remained vacant of any judgment. Then again, it seemed to carry no expression at all, save for a calm like cold steel. Tarkir suffers, but the plane is at least familiar with the forces at work here. The clans have their contingencies, their defenses. I don't want to think about what's happening elsewhere in a world with very different rules and no way of protecting itself if the worst happens. Narset shook her head. There are too many possibilities. none of which are good, and whatever else she might have said was eaten up by the loud, splintering noise of a crash and a low, urgent knelling, a warning that something was amiss. Elspeth and Narset jolted onto their feet, even as shouting boiled through the walls, a woman's high, desperate wail shearing through the clamor. "What's happening?" said Elspeth, serene as before, though her hand was already on the hilt of her blade. Narset cocked her head, listening to the bells, their cadence. She knew their vocabulary, but she hadn't heard this message before. This was new. This was something the monastery hadn't experienced, a disaster they'd anticipated but only knew on paper. The bells rang out again. "Dragon," said Narset, already running out of the study. "There's a wild dragon inside the school." There's been attacks in the past, of course. The wild dragons, out of hunger or playful malice, would occasionally test the Jeskai defenses, but those had been desultory, half-hearted efforts quickly deterred. The remnants of Ojutai's brood are more vicious, but even they were driven away. Never had a wild dragon even made it onto the deck of the ship. The Sky Riders and their mounts made sure of that, but there was one here now. And not only was it on the ship, it was inside the school. Fear shuddered through Narset. The fact that it was night was her only consolation. The youngest pupils only had lessons during the day to allow them time with their family and their friends. Scholarly pursuits were more important, but it was equally vital they grew as people, and that involved them building actual relationships with the world. It was the older children who would be in class then, the ones both driven enough and talented enough to volunteer for electives. Narset knew their curriculum well. They wouldn't immediately become fodder. Except immediately wasn't good enough. There was still a dragon inside with them. One that had somehow bypassed every protective measure. If it could do that, Narset crushed the rest of the thought down. No point in speculating. No reason to do anything but get there and assess the damage. She needed to triage the situation, ascertain what they could do, determine how many were already dead. The teachers all possessed an infallible courage. The dragon would have to go through them to get to the children, and because of that, Narset knew that there would be casualties. The only question was how many. Behind her, Elspeth's light splashed the corridor in pale shadows, the angel keeping abreast as Narset ran. Around them, monks were either herding frightened children and civilians away from danger or charging down to the attacker themselves. Narset couldn't help the frisson of pride that ran through her. They were good people, humble in peace, exquisite in crisis. Narset had known many who were the reverse, who would brag unceasingly and then falter at the first sign of adversity. Not the monks of Stormcrane, though. They had proved their mettle before and were proving it again. Oh shit. Narset and Elspeth turned another corner. The school laid in the belly of the ship like a seed dreaming of a better future. There had been months of heated argument preceding its construction. Some had voted for it to be in the topmost levels of the towers, where the students would have an unrestricted view of the world around them, while others tartly insisted that was suicide, suggesting instead they best hide the school where there be layers of defenses and 100 exit routes. Narset was eternally grateful the latter one, especially now as the ship bucked and heaved with the continued onslaught. More monks streamed past, the wounded cradled in their arms. Debris slicking them with gray dust. Narset brushed her fingers along each of them, instilling them with a little more speed, a little more endurance. Hardly the most impressive work of magic, but there was no time for anything else. In the near distance, something broke under the repeated assault, and the ship seemed to bellow in agony. In the distance, screams. Narset's heart lurched. Almost, she breathed. A prayer cradled in the word. The two descended one last cascade of stairs. Suddenly, she and Elspeth were face to face with the ship's attacker. Narset realized immediately how the dragon had evaded the defenses and the fatal mistake in their planning. The floor beneath the creature gaped into the open sky. It had gored its way up through the ship's hull, chewed its way through wood and metal. The hallway was almost too small for interloper, a leviathan, like a chunk of ice carved from a glacier, all teeth and vicious, sinuous motion. It was so big, only its head, throat, and a single paw were fully inside the ship. There was something almost comical about the sight, but Narset didn't feel like laughing, not with the dragon's gore scummed mouth, the lifeless arm jutting between its teeth, limp palm held out like its owner could still be saved. Beside her, Elspeth drew her sword with a silken whisper of iron. The dragon took no notice of the sound or the monk's bracketing its enormous form, its attention solely on a chamber recently collapsed. The door stove in like ribs. Through the wreckage, Narset could just about see 5 youths holding one another, and the determined face of a 6th standing at the ruins of the entrance, her hands held out. The faintest silvering of the air told Narset the girl had thrown up a barrier between her and the encroaching behemoth. That won't hold for long, Elspeth, terse, inhumanly calm. No, said Narset, it won't. The dragon's hide was stippled with wounds and filmed with a fine sheet of blood. Narset's monks had done what they could. However, it was too well armored, and the weapons only had so much reach. The dragon drew a gulping breath, and then another, throat working furiously as though it was trying to dislodge a bone. The temperature plummeted. When Narset next spoke, her breath was white in the air. Do you trust me? Elspeth did not reply, only unfurled her wings, rising into the air. She was brighter than any star, beautiful as legend, and Narset understood then why the faithful of those other planets would follow their angels into the mouth of hell. She lifted her radiant sword, looking for all the world like a weapon herself. On my mark, I need you to dive for its throat and cut deep. Narset had no idea how well an angel could survive a dragon's digestive tract or a point-blank blast of ice. But of all of them, Elspeth stood the best chance of doing what must be done. The dragon's mouth was still red gum and slick flesh, its throat still meat. The angel glanced at Narset, expression unchanged, and briefly, the Jeskai woman regretted never knowing Elspeth in her first life, the incorruptible figure whom the heavens clawed out of the grave to be its champion. Just say when. The dragon inhaled. Inside the well of its throat, Narset saw billowing steam as the cold turned the air heavy. She gestured for the arrayed monks to fall back, stared unblinkingly at the radiance until her eyes watered. They'd only have one chance. Too soon, and they risked truly testing the constitution of an angelic being. Too late, and, well, Narset wouldn't think about that yet either. Time slowed to honey. Now, Elspeth dove headfirst into the open maw, sword held out like a beacon. Narset saw it cut, and she saw it cut deep, piercing the roof of the dragon's mouth. She gestured at the monks with a hand. Now, gore erupted in a soupy curtain, drenching the angel, splattering the bright silver of her armor a violent red. Narset rushed forward with the 5 monks, prying the rubble apart, another 3 raising shields as they worked. The dragon reared back, head whipping to the right, bringing a wall crashing. Narset felt the air reverberate with the impact, but the shields held. It tried to bring its teeth down at Elspeth, but that only drove her sword deeper into its skull. The creature's roar became a shriek as the angel pushed her blade up, high as it could go, until it was hilt deep in the mucus-sheen tissue. The children were passed between monks and sent hurrying down a corridor. 2, 3, 4. Narset counted under her breath as each child vanished from sight. 6. The angel and her adversary were at an impasse, neither able to escape the threat of the other. But with their wards safely evacuated, the monks of Storm Crane Monastery no longer had to be cautious. In unison, they took arms again, those without weapons lifting hands, now ablaze with light. Elspeth had given them an opening. Foam bubbled through the dragon's maw. The dragon took another breath and gagged as Elspeth torqued her powerful frame in a half circle, slicing a flap of muscle from its mouth. The monks struck as the dragon screamed, steel and fists pulverizing soft tissue, shattering teeth, turning the insides of its jaws into a slaughterhouse. That was enough for the creature. It began to writhe back, struggling to escape its attackers, every hungry thought replaced by a need to flee. Mouth lolling wide enough for Elspeth to step back out. It fixed Narset with a baleful stare, before slithering down and, by the sound of it, up. "It's returned to the deck," said Elspeth. Narset could still feel her pulse hammering in her throat as she stared at the Archangel. Elspeth was a red effigy, her hair matted with blood. Even the glow of her wings was transformed, no longer that brilliant gold, but a ruddy light. What could be seen of her expression remained eerily tranquil. Story spotlight, chat! "Then let us pursue," said Narset, and they returned to the stairs. With her adrenaline starting to run low, she felt each pump of her legs and was both grateful and envious that Elspeth simply glided ahead of her. They emerged into the whipping winds of Tarkir sky. A shrill roar to Narset's left told her the Sky Riders had engaged the attacker. Narset spun a coil of match between her hands, ready to strike out the dragon if it should try the deck. But the beast didn't seem eager to face its opponents from the hallway again. It roared once, close enough that Narset felt its fetid breath as a cold wind, then swerved off the side of the ship, firing occasional blasts of white, icy air from its maw. Narset felt her muscles relax. The Sky Riders could handle things from here. Elspeth settled next to her. It seemed the Archangel had come to the same conclusion. "I will respect whatever decision you make. If you tell me that the Jeskai cannot assist the multiverse, I will leave and seek aid elsewhere," said the angel. "But the dragons will devour the other planes if something is not done. We could use your knowledge." Narset looked over the mutilated ship, her monks staring at her with expectant faces. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll give you my decision in the morning." It took several hours to inventory the damage. To Narset's relief, there were precious few casualties. Injuries were numerous, but the Storm Crane Monastery was famous for its healers, and there was no shortage of monks attending the wounded. The ship suffered the worst in the attack. A chunk of the hull was gone, complicating any ability to perform repairs. The builders would either have to work painstakingly from Dragonbrag or devise some way to land without the ship sinking immediately into the water. Those, however, were tomorrow's problems. Elspeth trailed after Narset in meditative silence as the latter spoke to each of the affected families. She was then taken to the baths while Narset consulted with her council on plans for next week. Which village might be affected by the situation? Which of their sibling monasteries needed contacting to ensure the populace remained sufficiently attended? It was scant hours before dawn when Narset finally concluded her duties as Waymaster, slinking to retrieve Elspeth. "These are your quarters," said Narset after leading the angel to the sleeping deck. She opened a nondescript door at the end of a corridor and gestured at the interior of the room. An oil lamp cast a soothing bronze warmth over the space inside, lengthening the shadows of Elspeth's wings so it seemed like she filled it entirely. As far as rooms went in the monastery, this was one of the more sumptuous ones. It held an indulgent amount of soft bedding, even a reading nook with cushioned chairs. Whenever a delegate from the other clans came to visit, they were housed here. The Jeskai woman watched with increasing apprehension as Elspeth walked a slow, exploratory circuit around the room. Her impassive face sheened with what was beginning to look worryingly like embarrassment. Are you certain? I feel like someone else might have more need for this space. No, said Narset. It is yours for the night. Make yourself comfortable. Alarm flickered across Elspeth's expression like the shadow of passing wings. Thank you, she said, with excessive care, leaving Narset to feel like she might have made a terrible faux pas. Elspeth saved her from any further analysis by folding her into a stiff-armed embrace. Ajani said very kind things about you. I'm glad to see they're all true. We'll speak in the morning. The angel stepped back. Narset was struck by the golden heat radiating from the angel, like she held the sun inside instead of a heart inside her chest. The Jeskai woman gave a curt nod, and the two, now exhausted of small talk and easy courtesies, gazed at one another for a few more excruciating seconds before Narset said, I suppose I shall let you sleep now. We will speak tomorrow. As the Waymaster of the Jeskai closed the door behind her, Elspeth, still standing with the kind of crisp posture usually reserved for military parades, it occurred to Narset that she had no idea if angels even slept. Taigam? Narset rubbed sleep from her eyes as the older monk let himself into her study. The recent years hadn't been terribly kind to him, though he was as muscular as he was in his youth. Lines had begun to gather like carrion birds around his eyes and mouth. His cheeks were thinner, the bones of his skull far more prominent than Narset remembered. Waymaster, I apologize for intruding at this hour, said Taigam, offering a perfunctory half-bow, but the matter is pressing. Is this about the reconstruction effort? I'm aware that the hull features a rather large hole right now, but we have guards stationed there to ensure that nothing takes advantage of it. Tomorrow, the builders will begin work. I just thought. Taigam's mouth thinned with impatience. It's not that. What is it, then? They'd been peers once. Under different circumstances, Narset might have wanted him as a friend, but Taigam had resented how quickly she had advanced through the ranks of a Dragon's Eye sanctuary, and how much Ojutai favored her. She couldn't blame him. Unlike her, he'd stayed loyal to their dragon, if not for the fact he was forced to choose between exile or his old allegiances. Taigam wouldn't have renounced Ojutai. Certainly, he would not have led a coup against him. Nonetheless, a familiarity of a shared history meant they shared a type of misshapen kinship. For that, Narset allowed him his liberties. That, and the fact that he missed Ojutai too. It's about your guest. Taigam stood at the threshold, arms folded. Elspeth? She was a great help today. She is only an omen of things to come. The words surprised a laugh from Narset. Taigam, I never took you for superstitious. Forgive me for my sense of delicacy, Waymaster. Because you asked, I will phrase it in plainer terms. The wild dragons had never been tempted to such violence before. Narset was silent. It may simply be coincidence, but we cannot deny the possibility that this attack was a consequence of her arrival. Taigam's voice softened. And we cannot risk it happening again. Already we are impaired. What will happen if we are assaulted again? We have no proof that Elspeth's presence was responsible for this. We have no proof it wasn't, came the suffocatingly gentle rejoinder. There was no venom in his words, no need for such. We gave up everything we held sacred for the sake of our people, didn't we? Raised our past and burned our future in hopes it'd buy the Jeskai freedom. What is the point of that freedom if we must die for someone else again? If we're meant to perish for another, it should have been Ojutai. Someone else might have called those words treason. Narset found she could not. Send her away, Narset. As far away from the Jeskai as it is possible, urged Tagam again. You are Waymaster now. Your highest responsibility is to your people. Do not forget that. And Narset said nothing to that either. The day had only just begun to bleed through the tarry, starless black of night when Elspeth heard a polite knock at the door. She opened to find Narset standing there, expression apologetic. I'm afraid the Jeskai cannot help you. Elspeth nodded. She had not come to Tarkir with any specific expectations, only a desire to provide warning, to find answers. It would have been preferable if she'd been able to solicit some help, but this was not Tarkir's responsibility. The Archangel. Narset adjusted the strap of a rucksack slung over her shoulder, her face filling with a ferocious light. But I can. Can I? Wow. Can I like? This is not good. It should be 3 next, not 6. Wizards. Where is the No, I can do this. It's fine. Story hasn't been good since War of Spark. Dude, when War of Spark story dropped, I saw several people saying War of Spark was bad. Like, I saw several people saying War story was not that good. So I think it's fine so far. I mean, it's only the first 2 episodes. There's 5 more to this. I imagine we'll get to more like interesting stuff afterwards. I think the issue is that it's a little confusing. That like people I think people won't really understand that, because the jump from dragons to Dragonstorm is, I think, a little kind of like hard to understand at first, but once you get past that, it seems fine for now. I wouldn't say it's bad at all. Would have loved a Rebellion set. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess my question is like, so they keep saying they don't want to do blocks anymore because blocks don't sell well and single sets just generally sell better. I question what a block version of Dragonstorm would even look like. Like, would it just be like Dragon Lords versus Cons, and then Dragonstorm would be the same thing with a bigger emphasis on dragons? So, like honestly, I feel like that would be like maybe less fun, because I feel like the environment of the set would be too similar almost. I mean, I haven't read the story since like. Actually, the only story I read was Hour of Devastation. That was it. I didn't read any other story. Like I didn't read Ixalan's. I didn't read like Dominaria. I didn't read any of those. But like, if you hate the story of Aether Drift, I can totally get that 100%, because it's just like Fast and Furious set, and also has loot. Ugh, no. God forbid loot. But I mean, so far this story feels fine. Like this story feels very like magic to me. I'm sure Aether Drift is probably terrible. I drove a car, and then I drove a car for longer, and then eventually another car drove next to me, and that car, the guy driving the car got mad at me. I still drove my car through the line of the cars to get to the car. Surprisingly great for Aether Drift? Oh, wow. That actually is surprising to hear that. Honestly, the actual issue is that it's like kind of it's exhausting to read this much for this long. I got 5 more things to go. I'm not sure I can do this, chat. I'm also not really sure this is like good content for my channel. Feels kind of jank for my my brand. Like the story feels fine to me, but I'm not really sure it's. Can read it on your own? Yeah, I think I might honestly. Like, dude, my chest and throat already got kind of hurt. My chest and throat are already starting to kind of hurt. It's, and we're on episode 3. I don't know. I tried it. Like I actually don't think I want to do this. I mean, this is the lowest viewer. Like this is the lowest viewer count I've ever had on the channel. So I mean, it's pretty clear that like this is not really a thing most of my viewers are interested in. Story's good. I think it's fine. I don't think story's bad at all. But I think it's more so a fact that I don't really think this is content people want to see. So honestly, I think I might end it here. To be honest. I do appreciate everyone who I do appreciate everyone who did tune in. I appreciate y'all. Unfortunately, I think it's just best if I read this on my own. Story's fine. I think it's. I will implore you read the story on your own and then post or take some jokes. Yeah, I mean, I could do maybe like little short edits of like. I don't know, cringe, like, paraphrasing of a story. I could do that. I could try that just for, like, content's sake. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Next week, I'm not gonna lie, bro. I'm not even sure what the plan is. I might have nothing next week, to be honest. Because, dude, I have so much footage to go through. I'm not sure if we'll have anything next week for a stream. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. Idea might be fun. I do kind of want to do like viewer deck reviews. I kind of want to try that eventually. I kind of want to see if I can get my hands on some of the old duels of the Planeswalker games. See if you was custom made cards, something. Yeah. I could also like do bomb the barrel stuff and do like Reddit reviews. Or do custom cards too, yeah. I could like yeah. That's not a terrible idea. Just like ask my community to do like make a custom card. Where is my here we go. Like I want to see if I can get my hands on one of the old duels of the Planeswalker games and see if we can play those on stream, because those were actually really fun games. Like those are all really good, and they took all of them off the Steam store. So now you kind of have to like scrounge through like dubious parts of the internet to even get them. So I'm a little nervous to even try and get my hands on one of them nowadays. I want to do a viewer deck review where I like ask YouTube members to submit their deck list and I'd like go over them. Custom cards, not a bad idea. There's always tier list streams you can do too. For the new sets come out. You can do a poll, yeah. I also just have like a crap ton of footage to go through right now. Like, I still gotta get 2 more pre-con upgrade videos out, and I still gotta do the Tarkir commander tier list as well. Like, I have a lot of videos to edit right now at the moment. It's a whole thing. So that also is kind of making me not want to do a stream just for the sake of trying to get content out. Not burn out. I mean, I don't think I'm burned out at all right now. I feel fine. So don't worry about me. I'm chill. I'm chill for now. But yeah. Lore streams probably not gonna happen anymore unless it's in like the formatting of the Plains tier list stream, where I go through like just a small paraphrase version of the lore of each plane and like tier list them. I might do that, but I'm probably not gonna be doing these like reading story streams anymore. Theories, This ain't game theory. This ain't game theory. I ain't Matt Pat. Where do you want Sword to go? I mean, Bolus is free apparently, but like at the same time, I kind of don't really think it means anything. It's still way too early to bring him back. Good idea, but I think maybe not for me. Maybe hit up Ristic Studies for that one. I think he might do a better job at that. That being said, thank you all for tuning in. I love y'all. We tried something new. Wasn't a fan of it, and that's okay. They just want the option for him? Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm hoping with Edge of Eternities they actually bring back the Fomori, but I also I kind of doubt they're going to. I feel like so my guess for edging is that it's gonna be Tezzeret becomes the new big bad, or they actually introduce the Fomori, which actually the cover art of the 2 precons for that set is out. And neither of them seem to be the Fomori or Tezzeret focused, so it could be neither, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, that being said, I love y'all. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And I will see you all next time.